KATU News. This is your voice, your vote.
Oregon is one of 3 states voting this November on whether to legalize marijuana for recreational use. Washington and Colorado are the others. The Oregon Cannabis Tax Act, or Measure 80, is now on the ballot, and its passage could have a huge impact on the state. The measure is getting mixed reaction.
I think the state is kind of in a deficit right now. It's something that could generate revenue, and people are using it already.
Frankly, I'm concerned that in some ways it would become a much more broadly used than it is now.
We know you have a lot of questions about this measure, and so do we. Today on Your Voice, Your Vote, we get answers from the man behind Measure 80. And good morning, I'm Patrick Preston, filling in for Steve Dunn. We thank you for joining us. Voters have many decisions to make this November, from deciding who should be president to selecting the new mayor of Portland, and a number of controversial initiatives, including the Oregon Cannabis Tax Act. What is it? Essentially, it's legalizing marijuana. Measure 80, as it's called, allows anyone 21 and older to grow, possess, and buy marijuana. There are no limits on amounts for personal use. Marijuana could be sold in state-licensed stores. It creates a commission to regulate those stores, and supporters say it'll raise $140 million a year by taxing cannabis sales to adults. Chief Petitioner of Measure 80, Paul Stanford, is here to answer the tough questions. He's owner of a chain of medical marijuana dispensaries around the country, including here in Oregon, and we thank you for being here today, sir.
Sure.
I want to start with a question.
Let me just clarify one thing, if I may.
Sure.
They're not dispensaries. Dispensaries are places that sell marijuana. What I own are clinics where doctors see patients. So I have medical clinics, not dispensaries. I just want to make that clear.
Thanks for clarifying that. Let's start with a question of timing on this. Why is now the right time, in your opinion, to legalize marijuana here in Oregon?
The polls are going our way better than they have in my lifetime. We are seeing majority support across the nation for reforming marijuana laws, and Oregon's always been on the cutting edge of that. You know, Oregon was the first state to decriminalize marijuana back in 1973. And so I think Oregon's a progressive state. We've always been a leader in national policies. So I'm excited and think that now's the time that we can win this election.
Now let's say you get your way. Paint a picture for us. What do you envision happening? Do you imagine us going down the street and finding the corner store selling marijuana?
No, it'll be state stores, akin to the state liquor stores. So it'll be regulated like liquor and just sold in state stores, just as you can go into a bar and buy alcohol. You'd be able to go into a cannabis bar where minors are not allowed in under the age of 21. We establish laws so there'll be no public consumption. There'll be a fine for that, and jail time for gratuitously providing marijuana to minors, and a serious felony for selling marijuana to minors.
Now, I've heard supporters like yourself say this is common sense policy, but legalizing marijuana isn't common. No other state has done it so far. So how is it common sense if nobody else has done it?
Well, you know, we saw what happened with alcohol prohibition and the gangs, and now we're seeing the same thing with the cartels in Mexico. They're funded by and large by the marijuana sales in the United States. So I think it's common sense to regulate the market and take it out of the hands of the kids and substance abusers who control it today, and put it in the hands of the state where it can generate revenue and be controlled. Currently, the government has abdicated responsibility to control this market, and we establish sound, common sense regulations.
So which voter out there are you thinking of? Somebody who perhaps you need to reach out to, like today. You have a chance to talk to them. Who is it that you're thinking of that is not yet made up their mind on this issue?
Well, you know, senior citizens in particular. You know, a lot of them can recall back to stories about alcohol prohibition, and they were taught that marijuana caused people to go crazy and kill themselves. We call that reefer madness, after a 1937 movie that propagated that misinformation. And so as medical marijuana has become more common, they can see that the sky hasn't fallen, but we need to regulate that market. We need to control it, and that's what we're trying to do.
Now, you've collected the signatures you need to get Measure 80 on the ballot, but you need to sell it to voters still. And part of that pitch is, will it raise a lot of money for the state? But here is one person who's not sold on it yet.
Okay.
Well, I've just never supported legalization of marijuana or taxing marijuana as a way to fund our schools or other public services. So obviously, if they pass, they pass, but I won't be voting for them.
Governor Kitzhaber made that comment last month right here on this show. So why do you think that legalizing pot here in Oregon would be a cash cow for the state?
Well, you know, we have a conservative estimate from Harvard economist Jeffrey Myron. He says that we'll bring in $140 million a year in revenue and save over $60 million in law enforcement costs, arresting growers and marijuana dealers who are currently profiting in the black market. So we think that's over $200 million a year. $400 million in the biennium, roughly 5% of the state budget.
You know, the counter to that is that the black market will still exist, that there will still be the cartels and everybody else that you're worried about doing the illegal business, trying to avoid the taxes.
Well, you know, they say there are moonshiners too, but I don't see many people selling liquor on the open market, and I know you don't see many people selling black market cigarettes either. So we think that regulating the market, most people will take advantage of those stores and not want to break the law if they're given a legal opportunity.
Let's say they follow your thought there and they go through it the legal route. How do you arrive at $140 million in taxes?
From the sales of cannabis, currently they say the market here is $1.5 billion. We think the price of cannabis will come down significantly. Again, that's an estimate from Harvard economist Jeffrey Myron, and he said that it would bring in $9 billion on a national basis and $140 million per year in the state of Oregon.
I'm sure a lot of folks want to track those dollars, so let's talk about the structure of the taxes. Are you going to look to tax by the ounce, by the transaction, by the license fee? How is this going to work?
Well, there'll be license fees. In fact, all of the lab testing and any legal challenges to the law will be paid by license fees. And then we direct the new Cannabis Commission that we create to set the price to lower the incentive to export cannabis to other states. While the price is high because marijuana is prohibited in Idaho or California or Washington State, the price will be higher to discourage that sort of illegal export. But I think the price will come down. It's very inexpensive to grow. If the price is the same as wine, we can anticipate that the production costs are going to be $20 a pound. So the ounce price on that is $1.50, and so if we can bring in $50 to $100 in revenue for something that only costs, let's say, under $5 to produce, it'll bring in a lot more taxes than cigarettes and alcohol do.
So your plan is to keep prices high, not to let them fall where the market allows them?
Let them fall somewhat. I mean, you know, the current market price is $200 to $500 an ounce. I anticipate initially the cost will be $50 to $100 an ounce, but that price will come down over time. And then people will be able to grow their own as well. So if they can't afford that, then they'll be able to grow. And just as there's no limit on the amount of beer a person can possess or alcohol a person can possess, we think it's really an issue of freedom, and that cannabis deserves to be regulated, and adults such as myself don't deserve to be labeled criminals.
And clear up for me, could anybody get a license? Could I apply and get a license?
Yeah, anyone who hasn't been found guilty of the fees we didn't determine. They'll be calculated to defray the costs. And so we don't say what the fees for the license will be. You need a license to grow it. We anticipate farmers will be the main people to benefit from that, a license to process it, and a license to sell it.
Now, money could be a selling point for some, but the counter argument is that increased marijuana use has many social costs. I want you to respond, if you can, to a comment we received from a Facebook follower named Amanda. She writes of marijuana, "It's a drug, plain and simple, that will alter your state of mind, and I prefer not to be on the road in my car while other people have chosen to smoke it and then drive. It's bad enough we have to put up with drunk drivers, let alone high drivers, not to mention it's a gateway drug to other drugs. Addictions cost too much pain and hurt to loved ones. I pray it does not pass." Paul, why should Oregon embrace a law that could lead to more addiction, perhaps more impaired drivers on the road?
Well, currently, marijuana is here, and it's here to stay, and we need to regulate that market. We leave the driving under the influence laws in place so that there won't be any more inebriated drivers. It's less debilitating than alcohol, but still we keep the laws in place for driving under the influence. When it comes to the gateway drug argument, the National Academy of Science in their Institute of Medicine report, Marijuana as Medicine, back 10 years ago said that that's a fallacy, that marijuana isn't a gateway drug. You know, for me, I think it might be a gateway to the refrigerator. But in terms of a gateway to other drugs, it's a gateway to the black market. So when you take marijuana out of the black market and you regulate it, that gateway will disappear. I know opponents will take issue with that, and we'll hear from them as we get closer to the election. But I want to ask you, because part of this law sets aside money for drug treatment. I believe it's 7% of the proceeds of tax revenue. That's right. By setting aside that money for drug treatment, are you acknowledging that this will create problems? Sure, and you know, currently alcoholics and addicts can't get the help they need when they need it. They're turned away 95% of the time unless they've got $10,000 a week to pay for treatment. So we wanted to address the concerns regarding drug treatment and use some of the money to help people who do have drug problems. Oh, well, if you're creating problems with this law... Well, I'm not saying we're creating them. I'm saying that those problems exist, and currently those people aren't getting the help they need, and we're going to provide money so that they will. I think that if someone has a problem with marijuana, where they're stealing to get marijuana or they're not fulfilling their duties and obligations to others, they need treatment. We'll provide money for that treatment. Just the same way that the lottery provides money for people who have gambling problems. The Oregon Liquor Control Commission provides money a little bit for alcoholics. We'll provide a lot more than either one of those do. And you don't think there will be more people seeking out that treatment if you legalize marijuana? No, I think that overall the use will drop. I really do. I think that the incentive is the black market, and a lot of people want to taste the forbidden fruit. And so I think by taking that that stigma away, it will help make it legitimate market. Would that argument then fall under the idea that during Prohibition more people drank back then? It does. It does. Right now? More people did drink. In fact, it was very common during alcohol prohibition for entire high schools to close down because the student body was drunk. Currently, kids have more access to marijuana, and so we want to take it out of the high school kids and let adults have safe access to it. I want to look into that. I appreciate you bringing that up. Sure. A recent poll by Public Policy Polling shows the measure failing right now among Oregonians who they asked. It's failing 46 to 43%, and there's 11% who are unsure. One local organization very concerned about any increase in marijuana use is Lines for Life. It's a substance abuse treatment program. Let's listen to their take on legalizing marijuana.
The biggest single concern we have is when you have an increase in a substance available to youth. It really changes things. We know, for example, any substance abuse by somebody, the younger they start, 11, 12, 13 years old, the more likely they are to have a lifetime of substance abuse issues, be it alcohol or marijuana or prescription drugs or anything else. That's going to ratchet up their opportunities. The taxes that you get for that are far outweighed by the cost to society in terms of health, accidents, problems with families, and other issues.
There you hear them talking about the impact on kids and on youth. I want to ask you, how much consideration did you give when you were pushing for this, when you wanted to get this in place to legalize marijuana here, the impact it would have on kids, on youth? Well, you know, I'm a parent. I have 3 teenagers, young adults. All the chief petitioners on this initiative are parents and grandparents. I was able to access marijuana in high school. There were other kids selling it to me in school, and we want to, and currently kids have easier access to marijuana than many adults do. And so we want to take it out of the hands of those kids. You don't see kids selling beer and liquor in the schools anymore, but back during alcohol prohibition you did. And so we want to regulate the market and control it. Currently, the government has abdicated responsibility to those least able to control the market. But aren't you getting kids closer to this if their older brother, their uncle, their cousin, any of those individuals can legally buy it? They already are. It's already there in the, they can illegally buy it today. In fact, they can just go down the street to their buddy in school and buy it. And so it really will control the market rather than make it more available to kids. One of the arguments that I've heard supporters make is that this will improve youth and public safety, and I had to question that. How is this going to make Oregon safer?
It will allow the police to concentrate their resources. Currently, according to this estimate from Jeffrey Myron, over $60 million a year that they spend incarcerating marijuana growers and dealers they can use to go after thieves and murderers and people who harm others.
Do you know how many marijuana growers are in prison?
I can tell you that annually there are about 800,000 arrests here in the United States. Those are arrests where they're taken into jail. And 90% of those are for simple possession. And so I can't tell you the exact number, but I do know in the United States right now there are several thousand people in prison who just sold marijuana, who never owned a gun, never threatened another person, and they've been sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. And so currently, to send someone to jail for life without the possibility of parole for a victimless crime is just wrong. And so we're here to redress that wrong.
The law that you set in place, the language would make the legal age 21 years old. Why 21?
Well, that's the age we have for alcohol, and so that's the age that society has long held, that people fully are ready to accept the responsibilities of adulthood, and so that's the age that we wanted to go with.
Paul Stanford, we appreciate you taking time to talk with us today, and we'll be following this issue all the way until November. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll be right back.